It's a long journey, but we did do it.
The US Fulbright Student Program in Austria has a number of different grant types to choose from, each of which offers students a unique way to engage with their disciplines and projects. To help you determine which grant type is the best for you, we sat down with the 2023-24 US Fulbright students to learn about each grant type from the recipients themselves.
In this interview, we discuss the combined grant with Eva Augst, who received this grant to conduct research, teach English, and study in Graz.
So as a combined grantee, my responsibilities involve essentially three things. So I teach, that's my primary responsibility. I teach essentially high school age students, Austrian students. I also participate in my own independent research project, and I take master's level courses at a university. So this is a very unique type of Fulbright grant. Fulbrights are usually, an ETA grant, a teaching grant, or a research grant, but not both. But this really unique experience that was available to me in Austria was very inspiring because it allowed me to both study at a very high level and do independent research that I was passionate about while still engaging very actively with the community. So I was not siloed away in a university, and I was also not, abandoning my research pursuits and what I was passionate about intellectually. And so the combined grant really offers you an entire wealth of opportunities to partake in. So the combined grant, as you may have guessed, is a very full schedule. So the teaching was my top priority during the duration of my grants. I taught essentially around 13 hours a week, which is close to a typical ETA workload. But in addition to that, I did have my university studies, which usually comprised around perhaps 4 to 5 hours a week in class. And additionally, of course, time for studying, writing essays, all the typical things you got to do for university. Usually I took 1 to 2 university courses per semester, so it was not a full course load in addition to my teaching work. The independent research, that's where it really gets variable. So depending on the week, if I had a lighter week teaching, if I had maybe lessons pre-prepared that I didn't need to, write a new lesson plan for every lesson that week, that would have been a heavier research week. That would have been a time when I maybe spent, 6 to 8 to maybe even 10 hours a week on research, versus if it was a more difficult teaching week, that had to be my priority. That was where my kind of loyalties lay, so to speak. And I would spend the majority of my time working on lesson planning or, spending time at school and engaging with fellow teachers and students. So it really depends on the research side, but balancing it is very, very doable. It's very kind of attainable, and I feel satisfied with essentially the completion of all three aspects of my grants. I was able to receive, grades in my university courses, credit in my university courses that I can apply towards future degrees in the US if I would like. And so there were really, in all aspects, I would say you can find a balance and you can find a way to get everything done. So this process is very unique from individual to individual. I had a very kind of easy and fortunate process with my research affiliate, and my research affiliate actually very much inspired the work that I did while I was in Graz. So typically, I think a lot of people, when they think of Austria, may think just of Vienna or maybe Salzburg, if you've seen The Sound of Music, as many Americans have. But Graz is actually the second largest city in Austria, and not many people have heard of it. But I chose to be there specifically because I found someone at the University of Graz, Professor Dr. Lucas Meyer, that was doing very kind of intriguing research to me and very kind of aligned with my own interests. And so I knew that I wanted to work with him. I essentially sent him a cold email stating, hello, I am a prospective Fulbright grantee trying to move to Graz and work with you on your research because it's very aligned with my own interests. And he actually responded very promptly and was very enthusiastic. And so was very kind of attentive throughout the process, helped me with all the necessary letters that you need from your affiliates, all of the kind of confirmation from my affiliate. And so he was very receptive to that. And I think It may depend on the professor, but I will say, especially a lot of Austrian intellectuals are eager to work with Americans, and they're eager to kind of further the cultural connection that we have between Austria and the US in an intellectual way as well. Once I actually got to Austria, he was one of the very first people that I met, and he even let me stay in his, daughter's bedroom at his house while I was still looking for an apartment for one night while I was super jet lagged. So he was very welcoming. He helped me before I even arrived, helped me to find an apartment, gave me some resources to find an apartment in Graz because I really had no connections before moving there. And so it was a really, really valuable connection to have, both intellectually and kind of as I was getting settled in the country. And then in addition to that, I will say it was also a very kind of fulfilling intellectual relationship. So again, as with many things with the Fulbright grant, I will say that the affiliate relationship is what you make it. And it is, it's about the effort that you put in. They will put in a reciprocal amount of effort usually. And so with my advisor, he gave me a lot of opportunities to come and work with him, work with his research groups, which I was very happy to accept. And I was actually able to present my own senior thesis research in a seminar context with some other PhDs and postdocs. And it was a very kind of stimulating intellectual environment. And so I was very fortunate with my affiliate, and I'm sure that many others will have similar stories of affiliates who really want to, engage with you while you're there. They want you to be there. They want to kind of engage intellectually and exchange ideas. And so they will very much help you push yourself, push your project further, and maybe even make it into something that you wouldn't even have dreamed of before. So I will say that the vast majority of the sort of challenges that I faced were not unexpected, and that is very much thanks to Fulbright Austria. So we were very well prepared for a lot of the kind of challenges that you may face when you visit. So things with visas, taxes, administrative difficulties. And so a lot of that was very well prepared for. We were kind of well briefed on that. One of the difficulties I will say that I encountered was with my host university when I was attempting to apply into the master's coursework program. So to fulfill that 1/3 portion of the combined grant, you do need to take university courses. And the university wanted some documents from me. Specifically, they wanted some documents with verification from my home government. And so one major piece of advice that I would give to any applicants and any prospective grantees is to, if you're working through any documentation, make sure that you get everything squared away before leaving the United States. There are lots of things with the Austrian government where they will ask you for kind of verification from your home government that it's a real certified document. And so start those processes early, and you'll be fine. And other than that, Fulbright Austria will help you every step of the way, and I really didn't have any major problems. As a combined grantee, I am also working in the classroom, as I mentioned. So I'm working with young people. I'm working with usually around 13 to 18-year-olds Austrian youths. And so definitely a big part of my kind of cultural outreach was involved with, talking to these kids every day, telling them about what's real and what's not real about America. So, the yellow school bus is real. We do go to school with the yellow school bus, but we don't typically wear uniforms to school. Usually the prom queen is not the head cheerleader, et cetera, et cetera. So we're kind of figuring it out as we go. But I think the most rewarding part, I would say, even apart from my own research and my own kind of academic experiences, was being able to engage with these kids on a daily basis and really hear both about, give them stories about my experience and give them a better, clearer picture of what the US is really like. It was also so fulfilling to hear from them about their experiences, what their childhoods are like, what their teenage years are like, what the expectations of them are kind of societally, culturally. And so I would say engaging with the young people, engaging with all of the educators at my schools as well, was a really kind of fulfilling way to both, fulfill my grants, but also, feel a really strong sense of connection with my community. Well, there have been quite a few. Number one, do not jaywalk when you come to Austria. I'm going to say this to the camera. do not jaywalk. You will get a death stare from an Oma on the street. So Austrians are they are rule followers typically, so they will, wait at a crosswalk when no cars are coming if the light is red. They will queue in a very orderly fashion in the grocery store. They will wait for everyone to get out of the train before you get on the train. It's a very kind of orderly culture. And so that was a big shock coming from the US, where it can often be kind of a hustle and bustle. Things move quickly, especially if you're from a big city. I will also say typically one of the things that was hardest for me as like a relatively extroverted person, I love to start conversations with people. Austrians are a little more withdrawn. You have to kind of work a little bit to kind of crack the harder exterior. People will not simply start conversations with you in the grocery line as they might in the US. But once you get to know them, Austrians are incredibly warm, funny, just great people to be around. And so I think, although that was shocking at first, it really allowed me to connect on a deeper level with Austrian people. Working on climate, as I did with my grants, and climate change issues can sometimes be a very discouraging endeavor. It's easy to feel kind of disconcerted by all the news you're getting about the climate, all of the kind of hopelessness and futility that we feel with regard to climate issues. But I will say that my biggest takeaway from the Fulbright experience and my time here in Austria specifically has been the kind of key similarity that Austria and the US share, which is that both places are really just countries full of like bright, passionate, motivated young people who are ready and willing to make a change. And working with my own research and my own kind of ideas of Austrian government, tax policy, etc., has been very fulfilling in its own way, but sometimes that can still feel discouraging. On the other hand, working with these young people gave me hope and gave me passion for a brighter future, and I really do believe that we will get there. I would say, especially coming from the combined grantee perspective, like I said, it can be hard to balance these things. It can be hard to figure out what to prioritize. And so the number one piece of advice I would give when formulating your application, when thinking about, how are all these pieces going to work together, because sometimes it can be overwhelming, is choosing something that you are personally very passionate about, very interested in, because you will often need to be self-motivated to work on that project and get that research done. And B, I would say absolutely choose something that has an interactive component. Choose something where you need to talk to people about it. You have to get the Austrian perspective, because otherwise it can be very easy to sort of retreat into your own research and sort of, do the work, but not necessarily connect it with the amazing place that we're in. Choose a topic that is personally meaningful to you, but also has community impacts and has opportunities within it to engage with your community and to really get to know the amazing country of Austria.